This is Peter Helland, again with Dr. E.Michael Jones, basically because of the murders in the synagogue in Pittsburgh and some other reasons, but we're coming on right again. The scripture that seems to be relevant is the Gospel of John, chapter 7, verse 7. It says, Jesus said, "The world cannot hate you, but it hates me, because I testify of it that the works thereof are evil." And then John in the epistles goes on and says, "In this the children of God are manifest, and the children of the devil. Whosoever doeth not righteousness is not of God, neither he that loveth not his brother." And before that, John said in the Gospel of John, the famous one, John 8:44, which you're familiar with.
Right.
That basically it says what the murderer, or how you want to phrase it, in the synagogue, everybody knows that's following it, that he said the Jews are children of Satan.
Right.
And you brought that up before, that John 8:44 basically says something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this thing is really a hot issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, in case you're not familiar with the facts, some guy walked into a synagogue, Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, and killed a number of people. The reports that came out afterwards, the analysis of it, invariably referred to anti-Semitism. Okay, and then they went beyond that, and they quoted the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and the ADL released a report, and it said that anti-Semitic incidents were up by 50% since the year before. So this is clearly this is the message here. The cause of this was anti-Semitism. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? Once again, we're confronted with a term that no one has ever defined. Okay? And so these people are not going to let a crisis go to waste, and so they're now attaching the term anti-Semitism to this. My experience here, it goes back 10 years. Okay? 10 years ago, I wrote a book called The Jewish Revolutionary Spirit. And in that book, I described 2,000 years of Jewish history and Jewish subversion at the same time, Jewish revolutionary activity. The premise, I've said it many times, when the Jews rejected Christ, they rejected Logos. When they rejected Logos, they rejected the order of the universe. And when they rejected the order of the universe, they became revolutionaries. And that's what they've been for 2,000 years now. So from the foot of the cross all the way up to the Kavanaugh hearings, you have this conflict here between Logos, the Catholic Church, and anti-Logos, the Jews. And that's what that was about. And so we said this. We basically said no one disputed the factual nature of what we said, but we got censored. Okay, YouTube censored us because, well, we don't know why, because they never give you a reason. Okay?
A complaint.
Okay. Now, it was a long book. It's 1,200 pages long. I didn't just say, this is what happened, this is terrible, and so on and so forth. I said that there was an attempt to deal with this problem. When the Roman Empire fell, the Catholic Church had to take over the governance of Europe. And it used certain words like diocese was a Roman term of Roman governance. Okay, and now the Church takes it over, and the Church has a responsibility for the social order. And they suddenly realize, well, the Jews are always disrupting the social order. With their revolutionary activity, whether it's Simon Bar Kokhba, you name it, all the way up the history we're talking about. The Aryan crisis was basically Jewish-inspired or Jewish-backed. So what are we going to do about it? The Church came up with a proposal, and the doctrine is called Sicut Judaeus Non. For 1,500 years, this was the teaching of the Church, and it basically is two parts. Okay, the first part is no one has the right to harm the Jew. Second part, the Jew has no right to destroy your culture. He has no right to undermine the morals of a Christian population or to ridicule the faith through blasphemy, the Christian faith through blasphemy. That was a workable solution. And I think not only but I have Jewish friends who think that that is the best solution available and a far better solution than anything that's being proposed right now. Now, for 10 years, okay, I hope, we're repeating ourselves, but I said for 10 years, I've been saying no one should harm the Jew. Okay? For 10 years, I have been called an anti-Semite by the Anti-Defamation League, which is now saying there is this epidemic of anti-Semitism going on in the world right now. Now, why are you doing that? Why are you lumping me with this man who just went in and killed somebody, killed all these people, when I'm saying the exact opposite? How can you use the same term to describe two opposite things? That's the problem here. That's the problem here, and we've got to address this problem because this is not going to go away. Okay, let's take a step back here and say, look, this is the type of thing that happens maybe not every day of the week, but every week. Every week you've got a completely violent culture. There's a violent culture. There are lots of guns around. And every week somebody walks into a Walmart or a public school or a Las Vegas hotel and starts shooting people. And there's nothing that this culture can do to stop it. They haven't stopped it. The FBI will run operations like the one in Michigan, where they'll give guns to people as agent provocateurs, but those guys weren't going to do it anyway. You can't stop these people. This guy had no criminal record. There was no way of knowing that. So let's take a step back here. Okay, I told you what I've been saying for 10 years. Now, what have the Jews been saying for 10 years? Now, we have a new wrinkle here. We have a split here among the Jews now about this incident. We have the left-wing Jews who are blaming Donald Trump. New York Times blamed Donald Trump for this. The right-wing Jews, of course, the Likudniks, are saying that Trump is doing everything that they want, and even more than what they want. So they're jumping into the thing and saying, no, Trump is not to blame here. So let's take both sides here. Okay, I just did an interview with Chuck Morse. Every time I said the word Jew, he said, oh, they're not Jews. Well, wait, we have the magical disappearing Jew here. Every time I said something, he said, oh, well, they're not really Jews. I said, Chuck, you're not the Pope. You're not the Jewish Pope. You don't have any right to say that, let's say, okay, the communists, the Marxists, they're not really Jews because they're Marxists. Okay, well, they would say the same thing to you. Left-wing Jews would say the same thing to you. So then I said, well, what about Nedarai Karta? They're completely ultra-Orthodox Jews, and they say that Zionism is an abomination, and Zionism has no place in Israel. So what? And I asked Chuck, well, what about them? And he says, oh, they're not really Jews. Well, wait a minute. Let's try and cover the whole waterfront here right now. For 10 years, what have the liberal Jews been promoting? Let's go back. For 50 years, what did liberal Jews promote? What was the main concern of the liberal Jews at the Kavanaugh hearings? Dianne Feinstein, Chuck Schumer. What is their main concern? What is their main concern with Brett Kavanaugh?
Well, abortion.
Abortion. Now what? So, and I've said, you can read the chapters in Jewish Revolutionary Spirit. If it weren't for Jews, we would not have abortion in this country. We've said this before. Bernard Nathans has said it. Okay, so you got liberal Jews promoting abortion, which is murder, isn't it? They like to talk around that, but basically, what is the lesson that you're teaching here? If a human being is inconvenient, kill him. Okay, now Chuck would say, well, I'm against that. I don't agree with that. These are liberal Jews. I'm a conservative Jew. So let's go to the other side of the spectrum now. Let's go to May of this year. I'm in Mashhad at the conference in Iran, and we're talking about the moving of the embassy to Jerusalem. And on the screen behind us is real-time snipers shooting Palestinians. Now, he gets all upset when I say this. Oh, no, that's self-defense. No, it's not self-defense. You know, these were the people that owned that land originally. They were kicked out, and now they're marching to the wall, unarmed people, and you're gunning them down. So what is the message here? For 10 years, I've been saying, don't harm the Jew. Okay? What have the Jews been saying for 10 years? Well, if we don't like you, we can kill you. And nobody can say anything against this. And if you criticize a Jew for killing somebody, whether it's their own offspring or whether it's a Palestinian, you're an anti-Semite. Okay? Now, what has this done? I mean, I know we have millions and billions of watchers on our YouTube video when they don't get censored. But this is the mainstream media. This is the message that the mainstream media is talking about. Okay, which is to say, what have they been doing? What have the Jews been doing for, let's go back to 1965, the big watermark change. They broke the production code. What have they been doing for 50 years, 60 years, going on 60 years now? They've been undermining the moral law in the name of liberation. That's what they're doing. That's what abortion is. That's what pornography is. That's what gay rights is. And now that's what Zionism is. Let's be honest here. We have the main major media here, the New York Times, certainly the Washington Post, will basically justify this behavior on the part of the Zionists. So at the same time I'm saying don't harm the Jew, I'm called an anti-Semite, and I'm being smeared with this man who went in and killed these people. They are undermining the moral law. So what's the message that you're spreading here? You don't like it? Kill somebody. Well, guess what? That is, the people are getting this message. The people are getting this message across this country. You're educating the entire country, and they're listening. And they got a lot of guns, and they're ready to act on this thing. Now, what else are you doing at the same time that you're spreading this message? You're censoring anyone who disagrees with you. And it's getting worse and worse and worse now. With YouTube, there's a lady from the ADL who basically censors. She's the guy. If she doesn't like it, if she doesn't like what you're doing, she will say what you're saying is hate speech. And that means you will not have access anymore to this forum, which should be a public forum, okay? This lady did not invent the internet, okay? She did not invent any of these things. And yet she now, in the name of this anti-Semitism, will be able to censor anything that you're saying. Well, what does this do? What happens when you can't talk anymore and you feel very strongly about something? You start acting rather than talking. And what happens if you feel really strongly about something and you think that this is something really unjust? Here's a Jewish organization, HIAS, that is basically flooding the country with immigrants. They're breaking the law. They are proud of the fact that they are breaking the law. They brag about the fact that they're breaking the law. Well, did you ever think what example you're setting here, fellas? If you're holding the law, if you can violate the law with impunity, why can't someone else? I mean, they feel just as strongly as you do. So what is the message here? Let's cut to the chase here. If what those Israeli snipers did by gunning down innocent women and children and unarmed people in Gaza, if that was right, then tell me why this is wrong. Why is this wrong? Is it because in one instance it's Jews that are being gunned down? Is that the reason? So in other words, if that's the reason, then we're talking about a totally repugnant racial ideology. Okay? Well,
it's at the core of Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism is very strong. Any attack on Israel has to be from the devil. That was part of their, so a lot of people are just knee-jerk trained to think anybody is criticizing.
Well, we're all trained. I understand that we're being trained. I'm saying let's talk about all of the other stuff we're being trained to do. We're being trained to do something. When you watch that video and you got a guy, there's a woman, she's running away, I'll shoot her in the back. You're training people. You're educating the population. That if you disagree with someone, you can shoot them. And you don't have to come up with justifications for this, because they don't come up with any justification for this. Whether it's abortion, whether it's Israeli snipers, they can kill anybody they want with impunity. And they don't have to make any apologies.
No, they're only saying that if that fella watched one of your videos, it's very possible, they're saying, that he could have been influenced on the path he was going.
So when I say no one has a right to harm the Jew, the guy's going to run out and get a gun and shoot somebody. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, if they're going to
that's completely irrational. And so what I'm saying here is, who's responsible for these killings? The ADL is responsible for these killings. The ADL has made it impossible to talk about this issue that is getting worse and worse and worse. Okay? The ADL has made it impossible to say, well, that group of people shouldn't have done that. They're just in this one instance. Well, these Jews feel they have a right to flood our country with immigrants from elsewhere, and nobody's allowed to criticize them. Well, what effect is that? I'm saying this is what happened to this guy. At a certain point, one of these blogs was, I'm going in. In other words, I'm tired of talking. I'm not going to post anything anymore. I'm going to go in and start taking the law into my own hands, because that's the lesson that I learned by watching television.
And the Likud party said, Netanyahu's party did put some blame on that synagogue for provoking him. And you saw that too, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can get into this liberal-conservative battle, but I'm saying that both sides are saying the same thing. I don't care whether you're a liberal Jew or whether you're a conservative Jew. You're both saying, if it's inconvenient, if I don't like it, I can kill somebody. And I, because I'm a Jew, I can say, well, it's reproductive rights. It's where Israel is defending itself against these invaders. These kids, I saw the picture, they have rocks. This kid had a slingshot, and he was throwing rocks, and so therefore he deserves to die. This is the type of argumentation. You have undermined the moral law, and now don't be surprised that people start acting out their aggression against you. Yep. Don't be surprised. Well, and don't blame me, okay? Listen, don't blame me. Don't call me an anti-Semite because I'm trying to resurrect the church's teaching on the Jews. Don't blame me, because the first thing I've said for 10 years is no one has the right to harm the Jew.
But at the same time, you have a right to criticize wrongdoing, even if it comes from Jewish people.
I have a duty to criticize wrongdoing.
Of course.
We all have a duty to criticize doing. And so what you've had here is increasingly draconian repression of any ability to hold the Jews responsible for their immoral actions. It's getting worse and worse and worse, because all you have to do is say the magic word anti-Semitism, and suddenly everything is over. That's the end of the discussion. You're banned. You can't talk. That's it. I'm saying if you do that, you are creating the very violence that you're complaining about. And this man is an example of that. You're repressing any type of discussion.
But Jesus, like we started, Jesus said, they hate me because I testify about them that their deeds are evil. It's the same. It's just a repeat. Probably all the apostles except John were martyred, probably with Jewish influence behind it. So it's the same repeat. They were doing the same thing as Jesus. They were testifying about the deeds, especially
Jesus testified against them.
And he said,
this is the passage. This man quoted the passage. It's in the Gospel of St. John, where Jesus says to him, "Your father is Satan." So the extrapolation from that is that Jews are the children of Satan. I did this in Prague, gave a talk in Prague when I was first getting started on the book. I quoted the Gospel of St. John. The headline next day is Jones says Jews are children of Satan. No, I didn't say that. Jesus Christ said that. So what are we going to do? Let's take this another step further. Let's ask the ADL, okay, what should we do now? Mr. Greenblatt, what should we do? The scripture says, has that passage. Did that lead to the killing of these Jews? Well, I'm sure there are Jews who say that. There are Jews who say that the Gospel of John is anti-Semitic. So what is your point? Do we ban the Gospel of St. John? Well, yeah, if you had the opportunity, you would. Well, are we going to stand up and simply accept that? Or do we have a right to say anything on this matter? Do we have a right or not?
We have a duty. I was listening to some preachers on the sermons on the internet, and he was saying that the U.S. State Department 10 years ago or something, 20 years ago, said that the Gospels were anti-Semitic.
Yes.
It was an official. Did you remember that?
Yes.
He was quoting that.
Yeah.
Well, that's our government right there.
Because the Jews got in and they decided we're going to press for this, and they say, well, we're going to have new guidelines about anti-Semitism, and you can't criticize the state of Israel, and you can't advocate the boycott of Israel, and you can't do this and you can't do that. Okay, you are completely shutting off all discussion, and I'm not an advocate of plumbing psychology, but basically when you repress this type of thing, you increase the pressure. The psychological pressure on people that they feel this is an important issue. We're being destroyed. I can't get anyone to listen to me. I'm going to have to take action. That's the psychological dynamic that's going on at this murder. And the ADL is responsible for it. You guys are responsible for it. You did it. Don't blame me.
Well, the Likud party said the same thing. I was reading their stuff. They were blaming him too. So the blame was coming from Israel itself, the Netanyahu's party.
Look, so when I did the interview with Chuck Morris, I started talking about the ADL. Well, he says, I'm not going to defend the ADL. Well, okay, so they're not really Jews? Wow, are you kidding me? I mean, who are you? You're just this little guy, you got your own little blog. They're the ones who determine what goes on here. They are the leaders, just as there were leaders at the time of Jesus Christ. Did every Jew in Jerusalem go along with the crucifixion of Jesus Christ? No. Did the Jewish people bring it about? Yes. So we have to be able to distinguish between individuals and this mobilized political faction known as the Jewish people. And if there's anyone who speaks for the Jewish people, it's the ADL. They don't have a pope. They don't have a magisterium. So who else is going to be? It's going to be the rich Jews who control organs like this. And who are these rich Jews? Well, a lot of them are criminals, like Meyer Lansky. And as I said before, Mo Dalitz. Mo Dalitz gave a lot of money to the ADL, and they gave him their Torches of Liberty Award. So that's the dynamic that's going on here. That's the dynamic. And someone's got to object. Someone's got to say, look, if this is not going to go well for you, okay? Because you cannot stop this. No one can stop this. If they could, they would have done it. There is no way. There was an Uzbek in New York City who rented a truck. And he drove the truck down a bicycle path and killed 8 people. Now, how are you going to stop that?
That was recently?
That was a year or so ago.
Oh, yeah.
It was a year or so ago. I actually talked to an FBI agent about that. And he said, well, there was a man who was the head of the Uzbek desk at the FBI in New York City, but he quit. Well, how many people can read Uzbek? Not a lot. Okay? And secondly, even if you could read Uzbek and the man typed in, I'm going to rent a truck tomorrow, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Stop him from renting a truck? You can't do that. This culture is defenseless. It's defenseless. And the more pressure you put on these people, the more you oppress these people, the more likely they will be to react violently against what they see is essentially a hopeless situation. How can you prevent this from becoming a hopeless situation? There's one way, by allowing people to talk about it. And everybody will agree with this in principle. You know, we have First Amendment rights and all this other type of stuff. But as soon as you get from principle to practice, everything goes out the window and we have nothing but sheer hypocrisy. And basically there are people who are saying, well, if we don't like what you say, you're not going to say it. You don't get to say it. This has been the Jewish strategy for decades now. It's called dynamic silence. Read Fatal Embrace by Mr. Ginsburg, and he will explain the whole thing to you chapter and verse. That is the way they have worked. That is the way they suppress anything they don't like. And you can't do this without having consequences.
But if you have the election coming up, and they're talking about the Russians influencing the election. Well, we know that IPEC, and there's a lot of Jewish money going to the Democrats. It used to be like 60%, and 40% of Republican money used to be, Republican money was 40% was Jewish. Well, is that influencing the election? And are these guys representing us, or are they representing the Jewish money? So if the Jewish money wants them to censor things like you're saying, they're going to pass laws to censor you.
Of course they are. Of course they are.
So who are they representing?
They represent the people who give them money. This is the whole reason why Donald Trump got elected. Large segments of the population recognize that we have two parties that represent the oligarchs and no party that represents the people.
It just came out.
So you can be more and more successful, and the more successful you are, the more you will be doomed to failure.
What do you mean?
You'll bring about the very thing that you claim that you do not want to bring about. Now, this brings up another issue. Was there a secret rejoicing at the ADL when this happened? Was there a kind of rejoicing that finally we have a crisis and we can collect more money? We've got a threat, and now we can use this threat to say we were right all along.
Well, Rahm Emanuel, what did he say?
Never let a crisis go to waste.
Okay, so how?
Okay, so we don't let a crisis go to waste. Now, we have to get a little bit historical here. Would Jews kill other Jews for political effect? Yes. We know they would, because they did. It's called the Lavon affair, where basically Israel, this is in the 50s, Israel is struggling, the Jews aren't going there. We need to generate more migration to Jews. So what the Mossad did is blow up a synagogue. I believe it was in Egypt. Blow up a synagogue and then create panic among you. Kill Jews. They killed their own people in order to create a panic and to create migration into Israel. Now, if they did it once, why wouldn't they do it twice?
Well, they never thought they'd get caught doing it. So that means if they did it once,
they never think they're going to get caught.
That's why they do it 100 other times.
That's why they did it. So the question is, and then we go back to the story of dorms where suddenly a swastika appears on the wall. And invariably, it turns out it's a Jewish student who painted the swastika on the wall. Okay? Same thing with synagogues. Who knows who paints swastikas on synagogues? Well, the first suspect should be the Jews, because they've been caught doing it time and time again.
Well, they can benefit from it.
This is the benefit that I'm talking about, because the big Jews, the ADL, IPAC, need to spread terror among the little Jews, because if they don't, they can't control them. This is what the Lavon affair was. Okay, it's happened over again. Every IPAC convention is basically an attempt to spread terror. It's an attempt on the part of big Jews to terrorize little Jews. The IPAC conventions in the early 90s. Pat Buchanan, the next Hitler. They do this with impunity. Impunity, they can do this. A little bit later, it's Ahmadinejad. The screens at the IPAC convention, the TV screens. Ahmadinejad, picture of Ahmadinejad, picture of Hitler, picture of Ahmadinejad, picture of Hitler.
Did they do that for Pat Buchanan?
They did. They called Pat Buchanan. Pat Buchanan was the next Hitler during the early 90s. They pulled out all the stops to destroy Pat Buchanan. And they used this type of this slanderous type of rhetoric. Well, at a certain point, it's like the boy who cried wolf. You've cried wolf too many times. Okay? And now you've got to take responsibility for for this man's actions, because you're more responsible for it than I am. Okay, you're the one who has been defending the slaughter of innocent people. You're the one who has been undermining the moral law. You're the one who's saying abortion is okay because it's reproductive rights. You go down the line, and what you suddenly realize is, as Malcolm X said, the chickens have come home to roost. Chickens have come home to roost. You're the one who's been condoning violence, murder for convenience sake, murder for political purposes, absolving it of any type of moral stigma. And now suddenly the chickens come home to roost, and some guy learned your message. He's a good learner. He learned the message that basically if you want to get your way in this world, you got to murder somebody.
But he didn't pick up your message of Sicut Judeo.
No, of course not.
He didn't pick up that.
Why would he? Why would he pick up my message? Because I've been censored. How can I reach this guy? How am I supposed to reach this guy and say, no, there's a Christian solution to this problem, and the Christian solution is not murder? There is a Christian solution. It worked for 1,500 years. How can I get to this guy?
Well, first of all,
because these are the people that are cutting off our access. This is supposed to be, first of all, the mainstream media, out of the question. Academia, out of the question. Mainstream publishing, out of the question. So they've driven us into this corner. Suddenly a new technology comes, and now they're going to suppress that too. Well, you can't do this and not expect some type of pushback.
I mean, they want to say there's no problem. Okay, now with the guy doing this, they have to say he's delusional. I mean, what's he talking about? There is no problem. This guy's delusional.
They want to say that anti-Semitism was the cause of this problem. There's never, what is the main, if you want to talk about, quote, anti-Semitism, what is the main cause of anti-Semitism? Jewish behavior.
Well, yeah, but I'm thinking how they reversed. I mean, it says about Jesus, they hated him without a cause. Well, that's what they want to say. Anti-Semitism is like...
It just is.
It's like Jesus.
It doesn't come from anything. It just is.
Yeah, they hated Jesus without a cause. We know that's true. Well, it's even more true with the Jews. Anti-Semitism, they hate the Jews without a cause, just like Christ. But is that the case?
There is no connection. As I said before, I did the interview yesterday. Anytime you say something, own up and take responsibility for something, the guy immediately says, oh, they're not really Jews. They're left-wing. And then you go, well, Neterai Carter, they're not left-wing. No, they're not really Jews either.
Okay, so if somebody persecutes them, then they're not persecuting Jews then. But that is not how it happens.
No.
So he's saying they're not Jews, but most people think those people in the synagogue and that group they were supporting, the left-wing group, bringing in the...
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I'm not trying to justify this. For 10 years, I've been saying this is not what should happen. For 10 years, they've been censoring me and calling me an anti-Semite, which means that my message did not reach this man. I don't know who he is. I mean, the message gets out. I don't know where it goes. But let's assume that this man had been watching, could have watched a YouTube video, could have watched something like that. And I'm saying, no one has the right to harm the Jew. They are the ones who are responsible for the fact that I did not reach this man, because they are censoring everything that they don't like. And by doing this, they are bringing about the very thing that they fear.
Yeah, because that message is the only thing that's going to save them. Because
who has attacked Christianity? The Christianity is the institution that says you should turn the other cheek. Thou shalt not kill. That is the only institution. The Catholic Church is the only institution that says this consistently and coherently, from abortion to genocide. Okay? And then what are we seeing here? A Jewish war on the Catholic Church.
Yeah, it says, for John, where you just read from, for this is the message that you heard from the beginning, that we should love one another, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one, and slew his brother. And wherefore slew he him? Because his own works were evil, and his brother's righteous. Marvel not, my brethren, if the world hates you. So we have passed from life unto death because we love the brethren. So, but love tells people the truth.
You can't divorce love from the truth. It has no meaning. The only way that love can be applied is in the context of an absolute moral law, which tells you what is good and what is bad. You can't just say love and then, as the gospel said, if someone asks you for a fish and you give them a snake. You have to have some type of objective context, and that's what we've been calling the logos, where you can differentiate between what is good and what is bad. So you can't have this constant picking and choosing, which is the morality that has been imposed on us by these Jewish propaganda campaigns. Abortion, homosexuality, Zionism. All a kind of undermining of the moral law. So be careful what you pray for, because you may undermine the moral law, and the next thing you know, someone's holding a gun at your head. And what are you going to say to him? It's immoral for you to do this to me? Well, you just told me that it wasn't immoral. That's what I mean by the chickens coming home to roost. That's what's happening here.
Well, somehow, American Christians have created this theology that because the Jews are God's chosen people, they're exempt from certain harsh criticisms. Well, just the opposite. If you're God's chosen people, God puts an extra burden on you to purify you. His discipline becomes even harder. So if somebody says they love the Jews, then be like God the Father and point out to them where they're transgressing the moral law and be hard on them on it. But they're not being hard because the politicians, I guess, who have influence don't want to do that, don't want to allow that because they like the money and the position that's coming to them.
That's right. That's right.
So how do you change a system that's so beholden to people being elected, they're voted in by trickery, by money, advertising?
How do you keep the system from being subverted?
Oh, it's very hard.
Why, or let's change the other way. Why was the system subverted? Because people did not follow the moral law. Because the politicians are in the same boat. Okay, they may not go out and shoot somebody. They've got a position of power, but that's not the issue with them. The issue with them is money. If this person will give me money, the money I need to stay in office, I will be happy to circumvent the moral law, undercut the moral law. I'll vote for something that is patently immoral, and we'll come up with some type of justification and say it's some type of freedom. That's what we've been witnessing for as long as. Well, let's go back to 65. Okay, we can go back longer if we want, but I mean that was a watershed. And that's when the church suddenly found that she couldn't defend the moral order anymore.
But since the country, I don't believe the country was founded on moral principles very strongly. I believe the moral law was violated in 1776. And all you need is a little bit. And once the moral law is violated here, it becomes easier for the next person to justify his violation. Because, first of all, they glorify the violation of the moral law, because that's how we got going. You know, just like that.
We have a natural tendency to rebel against the moral law. We have a natural tendency toward irrationality.
As a nation, we have that in our own original sin, our own nature.
We have a natural tendency to want to gratify our passions, even if it's irrational. We have this natural tendency, and so what we had were laws that would protect us from that. Let's just take gambling, for example. Gambling is a Jewish operation. It was always Jewish. Okay, it was illegal at a certain point. Why is it not illegal anymore? Well, because it generates so much money that the guy who has the casino can basically buy up politicians for next to nothing compared to what he has. I mean, Sheldon Adelson's the classic example. You know, it used to be illegal activity. It's generated all this money, and now he can simply use it to subvert the political order and get these people to accept something that's immoral because they will stay in office because they have the money. So it's across the board. And it only manifests, so at a certain point it manifests itself, but we have to understand, what's the cause here? What's the cause? I'm not the cause. Don't blame me. I've been telling people not to act on their violent passions. I've been saying this for 10 years now. I've been saying that there's no social progress outside the moral order. I've been saying that for going on 30 years now. And that's why I've been demonized. So I'm just saying, don't blame me.
Well, you're going to be demonized if you rebuke sin. Jesus says, marvel not that the world hates you. You have a duty to rebuke wrongdoing, and when you do it, don't expect... John the Baptist rebuked wrongdoing. He got his head chopped off.
Right.
All the apostles were martyred except John. Supposedly they couldn't kill him, and then he ends up on the island of Patmos. But why did they kill him? Because they were rebuking wrongdoing, a lot of it Jewish unbelief, and the anger got so intense. Stephen.
Right.
Stephen told him the truth. I mean, their heads were almost exploding with that truth.
Right.
And they couldn't help but kill him, even as Stephen's face looked like an angel and he could see Jesus at the right hand of the Father. Where's the wrongdoing in Stephen? There was zero.
Right.
But he got tremendous hate and they murdered him.
Yep.
That's human nature.
That's why we have laws. That's why we have civilization. And if this group spends all of its time undermining the laws so that they can make money, or for one reason or another, they shouldn't be surprised that people will act on it against them.
But
because now, I mean, what are we saying here? Okay, we're saying that this group of people has done something wrong. They need to be accountable. Well, that goes out into the ether. If they constantly refuse this is what we had here. As I said before at the beginning of the program, this was a group of people that are promoting what illegal. They're willing to break the law to flood this country with illegal immigrants. Well, you're willing to break the law, so why are you surprised when someone else breaks the law? You're teaching contempt for the rule of law. Do you think that's going to go unaffected? When I was in Iran, I saw this thing and I said, this is so horrible. This will not go unanswered. And maybe this is the answer to that. God will not be mocked. God will not be mocked.
You will reap what you sow.
You'll reap what you sow. What goes around comes around. So you set that example of shooting down innocent people. Don't be surprised that innocent people get shot down in your synagogue.
But see, this is
Don't be surprised.
If somebody goes to the abortion clinic and murders the abortionist and things like that, well, he broke the law. But you're saying what they're doing in that synagogue is even against our own laws? I mean, the laws protect...
The immigration operation said that they were willing to break the law in order to foster what their notion of what is good, their twisted notion of what is good. We are so sure that what we're doing is righteous, that it's tikkun olam, that we're healing the world, that we're willing to break the laws because we're superior beings. We're above your law.
Well, this is how
that's what they're saying. So this guy comes along and says, well, I'm above the law too, and I'm going to shoot you. Well, wait a minute. How do you dial that back? Not by suppressing the discussion. The more you suppress this discussion, the more violence you are going to create. This is my point. The ADL is responsible for this violence. Let's lay the blame at the feet of the people who have caused it. They are the ones that need to be accountable now. They are the ones. Because they are preventing people like me from telling people like that, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. That's been my message all along, and I can't get to these people because they are censoring me.
So in a sense, we have a repeat of John Brown, the abolitionist, who said that slavery was so wrong, didn't matter what the Constitution that was protecting it, didn't matter of all the laws that were protecting slavery. They had determined beforehand there's a superior law to all that. Even though the South could say, no, we have the Scriptures, we have Christian tradition, we have the Constitution protecting us, they said, forget it.
Well, what is a revolutionary? I mean, we talked about the Jewish revolutionary spirit. What is a revolutionary? It's man who has, it's messianic politics. I have an anointing from the Lord because I know I am so convinced of the righteousness of my cause that I can overthrow the entire moral order, the entire social order in my attempt to pursue this. This is why everybody was horrified by communism. You know, what would the communists do? They would kill the Tsar. There's the Tsar with his family. You know, innocent women, girls, children, gunning them down. Sverdlov, the Jew, gunning them down. Do you think that went unnoticed? Do you think that did not have some type of cosmic ramification?
Well, sure. I mean, but it shows itself. If somebody's willing to curse their parents, which is biblically, it's punishable by death, and they don't care, they're above that. Well, people do it all the time. They violate the Ten Commandments.
We're saying people, so what is a revolutionary? A revolutionary is someone who is so sure of the moral superiority of his position that nothing will stand in my way. Not human life, the sanctity of human life, not laws, nothing. Nothing. I will stop at nothing. And that's what they were saying. So basically the guy he's collecting guns, and he said, okay, if you're going to stop at nothing, then I'm going to stop at nothing.
Sure.
And I will do the same thing you're doing, because you're the one who's telling me that the moral law does not apply. It doesn't apply to you. You're special. Well, I'm special too. I'm every bit as revolutionary as you are, and I'm going to act on it. And they've got you. What you're doing by this, you're creating thousands of people all across the country.
Sure.
Who are being completely alienated by an oppressive, unjust system. They're being oppressed because of the color of their skin, for example. They're being demonized because of where they come from, and they feel that they have no recourse. These people, we destroyed the religious basis for your society. You have no recourse. We told you that religion was all just a bunch of fairy tales. So why would you pray to God?
That's what the communists did. But I'm meeting people who are really frustrated because you get the one message of Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, equality. The new morality is equality. So everything needs to be equal. But then they look and they go, well, hold it here. The Jewish people are only 2 or 3% of the population, and then they look around, but they control Congress, or they have so much influence everywhere. That's not equality. If it's supposed to be equality, how come there's so much inequality when it comes to them? But they're the same ones that force everything else, all these other areas to be equal, which seem absurd. So once people start seeing that more and more, how are we going to say don't harm the Jews? It's going to get harder and harder to say live with it. I mean,
there are people. I mean, I get comments all the time. It's Christianity. It's a waste of time. It's Jewish. Your Catholicism is nothing. It's Jewish. You're a slave. This is the slave mentality. We need Nietzsche or something like that. You know, all the white guys, the pagans, whatever. You know what I mean? Those people. We don't need this Christian morality. Well, this is the reaction. In a sense, they're falling right into the trap that the Jews prepared for them by saying there's no morality. If there's no morality, then it's all force. And if it's all force, I better get a gun. Right? Isn't this logical? Isn't this logical?
Right.
And if I've got a gun, well, I may as well use it.
Well, to these young people, maybe everybody's got a gun. So the slightest little thing is going to trigger somebody.
Certain segments of the population do this on a regular basis. This was the hypocrisy of Black Lives Matter. Okay, where we do not talk about, where we're ready to overthrow the moral law in places like Ferguson, Missouri, where we're burning down buildings and stuff like that, but no one's talking about the south side of Chicago. Every year there are, 700 people get murdered. The place where my wife used to teach in North Philadelphia just recently, drive-by shooting with a guy who has an AK-47. That's a powerful weapon. especially when you're just standing there on the street corner not suspecting anything. Okay? What we've seen is the collapse of morality in certain segments of the population. And when you have a collapse of morality, you have a rise of force, of deadly force. It's natural. It's like the way day flows from night.
Well, that's how this country started. William Penn used to say stuff like that. Your own state. If God's law is not ruling, if God's not ruling, well, then you have to have a dictator ruling. If people don't,
you have to appeal to force.
Yeah.
If there's if the moral law is just a myth, if it's a social construct, the way the Foucauldians talk about, the way they talk about gender is just a myth. It's all just a social construct. There's no objective being. There's no objective morality. Everything is force then. It's that simple. Shakespeare said it a long time ago, the Ulysses speech in Troilus and Cressida. Take but degree away, untune that string, and hark what discord follows. You know, and then what you see is everything evolves into appetite, and Wolf, the universal appetite, devours himself. And that's what we're seeing here. A culture that is beginning to start to devour itself, killing each other because of the systematic undermining of the moral law that has taken place for basically our entire lifetime.
Because we've got this, what's the worst? Is, you got a slave mentality. Well, I was just talking to somebody about that. So hold it here. Adam was to till the garden, and the word is slave, till is slave. He was to till that garden, but he was tempted to rebellion. So Jesus had to come, take on the form of a slave, and show us who we are. Well, yes. We don't like that image.
Well, I mean, if it weren't already explicit, Cardinal Ratzinger, probably Pope Benedict at the time when he said it, said that our model is not Spartacus or Simon Bar Kokhba. Our model is not to take up the sword. That's what they did. That's what they did, and it ended badly. And the fact is that the Christians did end up taking over the Roman Empire, but they did not do it by military force or by violence or by terrorism. That is not the Christian way. So why are you demonizing me for being a Christian? Why are you demonizing? Well, because you don't like Christianity.
No.
And why don't you like Christianity? Because you killed Christ. That's why. So let's get to the reality of the situation and stop this charade of moral superiority. It's a charade. It's nothing but hypocrisy.
But they killed him because he did take on the form of a slave. They didn't want a Messiah that would take on the form of a slave and become obedient unto death, even to the death of the cross. They said, come down off the cross.
And we'll accept you as the Messiah.
But Jesus had to. Adam refused to maintain the form of a slave. He refused. He went into rebellion. He said, I will not be like a slave. What do you think I am, a slave? Yeah, that's what you are, Adam. That's who we are. And Christ said, yeah, you want to see me? You want to know who you are? Look at me. I'm a slave. You don't like it? Tell Nietzsche tough luck. I'm sorry, Fred. You don't like slave mentality. Well, Jesus seemed to like it. What's wrong with it? Well, Americans don't like it either. If you look at the founding of this country, slavery was like, it drove us crazy. We're not slaves. What does the king think we are? His slaves? Well, sorry. A child is the same as a slave, it says, until he's emancipated. You don't like it? What's wrong with it? Adam didn't like it. He was tempted to get out of it, and he did. Not for long.
So what you have is the worst of both worlds. You have a culture of narcissism where you give people the illusion that they have total hegemony over their own lives. And that's the best way to enslave them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what gender ideology is. Why is the homosexual the ideal citizen? Because he's a narcissist. And why is narcissism so important? Because you have the illusion that you're all-powerful when you're really enslaved by your own passions. And that is precisely the means of control. So every guy, every 20-year-old who shows up in Berlin is going to be the next Steve Jobs. And that's a good way to cheat him out of a decent wage of the sort that he might have earned before that time. We've talked about this before. This is the form of control. We are waking up to this form of control. So when you wake up to this form of control and the information starts to spread, there is going to be rage on the certain part. And so we have to be able to explain the entire message. Okay? And that's precisely why I wrote this book. Okay? There is a way of negotiating this peacefully. I have Jews now writing to me on a regular basis saying they agree with me and this is a better solution than the predicament they get in, because they're farsighted enough to see that if they keep going down this road and undermining the moral law, they are going to suffer.
Right. And unfortunately, it seems like it takes this.
And it's not the first time. As we said, Georg Ratzinger wrote the book in the 1890s, and he said that the working man is being outraged, he is being exploited, and the government has to enforce these Christian laws, and if they don't, these workers will become violent. All they need to find is ein Führer. That was the word he used, and that was one of the most prophetic statements I've ever read. And that is the situation. So which way is it going to be?
Right, right. If the Jewish people do not restrain their tendency to corrupt the morals and their tendency to overdo usury or whatever, if they don't restrain that, then how it's going to get very hard to restrain people from harming them.
If you're constantly undermining the moral law, don't be surprised when somebody pulls a gun and shoots you. I don't know how else to say it.
Right, because they're just going to say, this is so unequal,
right,
that I can't live with it.
So let's hope people get the message. Let's see if YouTube censors this video. Let's see. Let's see what happens.
Okay, this is the show Israel with Dr. E.Michael Jones, and hopefully this was helpful.